Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of True to Form. In a week when retained jockeys have been the popular flavour, I'm very thankful to keep my seat in this studio. What have we got on this week's episode? Well, the Grade 1 Ballymore Novice Hurdle. Did we see any Cheltenham winners from the race? Dan Skelton, will he have a good weekend this weekend? My biggest Eyecatchers, and a horse who could be a future Grade 2 winner. That's this week's True to Form. We start with From the Audience, a new thing for True to Form that we didn't include in last week's episode. And if you want to get your questions in to view in True to Form, make sure to let us know in the YouTube comments or on the Twitter page at Ash Symonds Journo. This week's question we're going to talk about is from Lewis Crockford on Twitter. What do we make of the Ballymore Novice? Did we see a Cheltenham winner in the race? In short, for me, no. I thought it was a fine race. I thought Sortudo was a bit disappointing not to go past I'll Sort That, and that's not to take away from I'll Sort That. I thought he was a nice horse, and he's obviously a very gritty horse. He's unbeaten now. I think he's got plenty of ability, but I wanted Sortudo to go past it eventually in the end. You saw the drift for St. Bacco in the market, and I thought that was really, really smelly, and he obviously ran like that, so that was disappointing. But then Sortudo loomed up, and you thought, here we go, Patrick Mullins, just press the button, he'll go by. And in credit to I'll Sort That, he found more, but I would have wanted Sortudo to go past, and he ultimately didn't. Now, you look at Sortudo, what do you do next? Do you go Bartlett? Do you go to the old Ballymore, which is now the Turners, or do you go to Supreme? I don't think you can confidently say go to the Bartlett, because if he's a staying horse, surely he would have gone past. In his Cork Maiden Hurdle and his Ferryhouse Bumper, he showed plenty of speed. If you're going to do anything with him, you'd potentially step him down and trip to the Supreme. And would I see him as a Supreme winner? No. So ultimately, Ballymore Novice, lovely race to watch. Well done to the winning connections, but for me, no Cheltenham winners. Second question from you guys, so thank you very much for getting those questions in. It's from Liam Bennington. Thank you, Liam. His question: can you confidently pick a field of 5 for the Ryanair, excluding Factor File? Looking through the market, everything either goes to the Gold Cup or the Queen Mum Champion Chase. Factor File could be the shortest price of the week based on a lack of opposition. Something we discussed on True to Form last week, and I do kind of agree with you here, Liam. What's going to face up against Factor File in the Ryanair? And to be honest, I don't think it's much. I think you can put it into a category of possibles and probables. I think the probables, Hartwood, second in the race last year, don't see why they wouldn't go again. Gidley Park, he's got entries around the place, but I think the Ryanair is definitely the race you've got to go for. Second to Django Bay in the 1965 chase. Matata obviously won the handicap chase on New Year's Day, and then Connection's already said all roads lead to the Ryanair. His handicap mark wouldn't allow him to go in another handicap, be competitive anyway, so you have to go for the Ryanair. And then either Founder 50 or Firefox. I think maybe both could go, because both look like 2.5 mile horses. I think Founder 50 has an entry for the Queen Mum, the Ryanair and the Gold Cup, the only horse this year to have that, so fair play to him. I think the Ryanair would look the most likely race for him. And Firefox, if they are going to go to Cheltenham with him, again, Ryanair would look sort of likely. So either one of them, I would be surprised if it's both, but either one. So that's sort of 4 horses that are probable against Factor File. The possibles, John Bon and Gaelic Warrior. John Bon, I think a lot will depend on Clarence House this weekend. I'm not sure if he's going to go. And then if I don't think he'll go to the Ryanair with a competitive chance. And Gaelic Warrior, I think he's the sneaky one. I think he could go to the Ryanair. Do they really want to go to the Gold Cup and spend another 3 furlongs with him based on his King George run? I'm not sure. And with Paul Townend potentially being available for Gaelic Warrior and the Ryanair and not for the Gold Cup, I think that could also sway opinion. So that would be for me. Those are the probables, and Gaelic Warrior is probably the possible. We now move on to names to note. These are winning horses over the last 7 days that I was really quite impressed by, and I urge you all to put them in the tracker if you believe any word I say. Mortal Coil was the first horse. He won on Friday at Exeter in a bumper. I thought he was quite impressive, and I think the interesting thing about this horse is he actually chucked off his jockey Joshua Bryan in the paddock before the race. So you thought, what's he going to be like? Is he a little bit of a hothead of a horse? And he was keen in the race. He was quite keen, but I think the way he was able to be keen, make cool, and still go away at the line, I thought he was very, very impressive. And I think he's a horse who could be slightly underestimated connections wise. It's the age old thing, and you don't want to you don't want to beat down on these sort of smaller connections as such, but when you look at horse trained by Tom Weston, ridden by Joshua Bryan, you think, what's this horse going to be like? But I think Tom Weston's got a fantastic horse on his hands here. I thought the second bold step for the Royals and Nicky Henderson was shaped well nicely in second there, but I thought the front two just went away from the field, and the way that Mortal Coil did it was just so impressive. And I thought, if he's not going to maybe win another bumper this season, he could go and win another bumper, but if he's not going to do that, especially over hurdles next season, is the way you're going to want to be following him. He could be popping up in a maiden hurdle at a nice enough price and could be going well. So I thought Mortal Coil at Exeter on Friday was quite impressive on his bumper run there. And then just on Sunday, and it wasn't one that made anyone rich, Limerick last one at 2 to 15. I know, one for those naps and those Telegram pages, but she was still quite impressive, I thought. Anthony Honeyball won both divisions of the race. I thought Limerick Lass was the more impressive mare of the two divisions. She won it nicely, and I just think that they're going to go now to the Jane Seymour at Sandown, the Grade 2. I think it actually could be quite an interesting race, the Jane Seymour this year, because it tends to be quite a small field. But this year you could be seeing her, Supreme Malinas, St Irene for Nick Schofield, La Conquière, Kingston Queen, a Path to Ronda, Jackie Hobbs. You could be having 7 or 8 really decent mares who all have a chance in the Grade 2. Limerick Lass is probably the one that doesn't have that proven grade or listed form like some of those horses in there, like Supreme Malinas or La Conquière or Kingston Queen. But I thought she's shaped like a horse who's massively on the up, and if she's not going to win something like the Jane Seymour, which she definitely has a great chance in, she's going to be one for 3 mile fences next season. I could see her being a potential shout for like the Mare's Chase next season. There's not a million miles away from her being that type of horse, but there's a lot of water to go under the bridge until then, and I thought she was very impressed with what she did at Fontwell, and she can definitely improve to be a graded horse. If not, handicap with her at the end of the season. She was quite good. And I just want to give one more shout out, and any of you loyal fans, if there are any out there, that know me, they'll know that I like Tony Carroll, and I just want to give a small shout out to the man. It took 2 episodes and I got to see the producers laughing behind the camera, but he's in great form. 13 winners this year. He had his record total last year. Gogo Yabari won 2 days in a row, winning at Lingfield and then won at Chelmsford on Sunday. Had a winner since then. The Irish is in flying form, and hopefully he's going to be a all-weather champion trainer this year. And just shout out to the big man Tone and everyone back at home, because they're in great form, and hopefully that continues. But those are my names to note for this week's episode of True to Form. Now we go on to the Eyecatchers section, hopefully some horses again to put in those trackers to potentially be popping up and going one better or a couple better than their finishing places over the last 7 days. The first one I want to mention is Cocktail Bleu behind Baron Noir. I thought this was a good performance. I actually had a couple of quid on Cocktail Bleu, so I was maybe having the sort of blinkers effect on the horse and potentially reading it a bit too nicely, but I thought he ran really, really nicely, and there was actually a nice market move from the horse. I think he was about 8 to 1 the night before, and he came into a nice price and made it about 9 to 2 or something, so I think Connections did fancy him. I'll caveat this, he has a tendency to jump out to his right, so that's not going to be good going sort of left-hander or anything like that, or even going right-hander. He does lose lengths at his hurdles, but I thought he travelled really, really nicely into the race, and I actually think he gave Baron Noir something to think about. I'm a bit disappointed that he wasn't kept to the left of Baron Noir at the last. I don't want to crab jockeys too much, because I couldn't ride a horse 5 yards, let alone 3 miles, but I thought if he kept the horse to the left of Baron Noir, he could have kept him straighter and then potentially had a better chance of winning the race, or at least finishing closer. Anyway, he ran a nice race. I think he still could be very competitive of his handicap mark when he gets one in the sort of mid-120s, I imagine. So Cocktail Bleu was definitely an eye-catcher at Kempton on Saturday. Going over to Sunday, I thought Predator's Gold was very interesting. Finished 3rd in the Grade 3 Novice Chase that day. It was won by Kappa J Pike, and I actually thought the race suited quite nicely to Kappa J Pike in the second there, because it's sort of like they went really hard out from early on, did Predator's Gold and the Enabler, and it just set up for the late closers. And Kappa J Pike didn't really jump at all well, and yet finished with a wet sail. Looked like best mate staying up the hill, but it's just because the race suited that horse and the way the race shaped up. Predator's Gold ran nicely, and the fact that he went quite early from the front with the Enabler, and it was only beaten 4 lengths, the Enabler's beaten 18 lengths. I think that suggests that Predator's Gold is quite a nice horse still. He had a big layoff after his novice hurdle campaign to then come into novice chasing. I think there's something to do with this horse, and I think maybe handicap chasing will be his sort of game going forwards. Maybe some of the nationals going forward or in those big 3 mile handicap chase. I thought Predator's Gold could be very competitive off that. And then the final one was at Fontwell on Sunday. Manny Gold, I thought ran a good race here for Warren Great Chicks. Rated 111. Just looking at some previous form, was ahead of a horse called Fontes Blenheim, who's now rated 120. Was then behind the Boss Bear at Plumpton, who's now 2 from 3 for the Moors. And then finished second to Legendary Luke on Sunday. Legendary Luke's a nice horse for Jamie Snowden and the racing club. Could be quite a nice 3 mile chaser going forwards, and ran a good race this day. And Legendary Luke was coming into this under a penalty, had won previously, so maybe expects to get a little bit closer. But I thought he ran a nice race behind Legendary Luke, and I think Legendary Luke can improve to be a really, really nice horse. Manny Gold just sat nicely off the boil, sat really quietly, picked off rivals, made a nice move at the last, and then just finished staying on second. I think he could be a nice horse going forward. 2.5 miles he's been running at now, could potentially step up to 3 miles in time, and I think that would be where his calling would be, 3 miles over fences next season. But for the moment, if he's racing in those low 110s, maybe creeping up into the mid 110s, he'll be a horse to follow in handicaps going forward. So those are my 3 eye catchers for this week. The final section of True to Form this week is a look ahead. Nothing to go into proceed with caution this week. I thought all the horses were very fine, so well done to all of them. And this week I want to highlight 2 horses from the Dan Skelton yard who could be very interesting this weekend at various different tracks. I'm going to start at Windsor on Friday. I'm going to go with Be Aware. He's not going to make you rich. He's a short enough price. He is a well fancy favourite, but I thought that he could take a bit of beating in this, to be honest. I thought he was very nice at Sandown last time out behind Alhambra. I thought the way he jumped from the front, and his jumping is his massive asset. I think that's going to really suit him at a track like Windsor. Just get into a nice rhythm and go around and sort of give it to the rest of the field and see, look, catch me if you can, really. And he sort of did that to Alhambra at Sandown last time out, and I thought, you know, Alhambra obviously put in a massive performance to beat him, but he still carried Alhambra all the way into the race and still did enough to finish second and finish ahead of Lump Sum. Dropping down in grade now for the Lightning Novices Chase, I thought this could be a race that he could definitely take down. And yeah, like he's got no questions asked in the race. Hansard, you know, no questions asked. So I don't think was crying out for stepping down in trip of what he did last time out. And Hansard, as much as he has been good over fences so far, he was starting to become a little bit of an expensive horse to follow over hurdles last season. So for him to now suddenly be a grade 2 winner over novice chasing, beating a horse like Be Aware, I think it's a long enough stretch to make. I thought Be Aware could be quite a hard horse to beat in the Lightning Novices Chase at Windsor on Friday. And then the other Dan Skelton I also want to highlight is Nurse Susan, running at Ascot on Saturday in the grade 2 Warfield Mares Hurdle. With this mare, I just think she's a horse that they've obviously had issues with. She was a horse they fought a lot of over the last couple of years, but it's just been hard to get her right at home and then on the track. But when she has been on the track, she's been very impressive. And just look at this season. She won nicely at Cheltenham earlier in the year, and then she won at Sandown last time out, beating Jubilee Alpha. I think they had in mind for her that the Coral Cup was going to be a potential race for her, but I think they're potentially just handicapping her out of that slightly. But I can see why. Just why not win with the horse now and while she's in form, and then just have a little look. If you happen to get to something like a Coral Cup or even a Mare's Hurdle, have a look later down the line. But it's very much a here and now horse, I think, Nurse Susan. And I thought this weekend's Ascot race was going to be a very winnable one for her, because the next in the market at the current stage of speaking is Take No Chances for the same yard. But Harry Skelton's jocked up on Nurse Susan, and then Harry Skelton's jocked up on Take No Chances at Windsor one day earlier. So it looks like that's where the running plans are going to be. And then you look at the race around Nurse Susan, and I'm not sure what there is to beat her. She's already beaten Sunset Marquesa. Joyeuse has to sort of improve from being disappointing this season over fences. La Conquière for Jamie Snowden, a nice horse. Will they step her up into open company when they've got Mare's novice potential going forward? I'm not too sure. She's about 2-1, 9-4 now. I could see her being a bit shorter on the day, and I thought there was not too much in there to beat Nurse Susan. So I thought she'd have a great chance at Ascot on Saturday to hopefully complete a nice double in my eyes for Dan Skelton and Harry Skelton. That's all for this week's episode of True to Form. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you for the support on episode 1. It was nice to see some lovely comments in the YouTube comments. It was making me blush at home, to be honest now. So thank you very much. And if you want to see anything else on next week's episode, if you'd like to see anyone stood next to me, please do let me know. Any questions you have for me to answer in next week's episode, please again do let me know in the comments or over on my Twitter at @ASymondsJono. DMs are always open. And yeah, thank you very much for watching this week's episode. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Racing TV YouTube channel. And until then, this has been True to Form.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.